Hello, Gems. Welcome to another episode of Tiaras and Tech. I'm your host, Shelley Benhoff, and today I'm talking to Emily Tsitrian, Manager of Implementation Consulting at Stripe and author of an excellent book called Make Me the Boss: Surviving as a Millennial Manager in the Corporate World. We talked about how millennials can become better managers, best practice in management during the time of COVID, and connecting with people at work. Without further ado, on to the episode. Hey, Emily, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Shelley. And I'm very proud of us for staying calm with some technical difficulties this morning, but we're doing great. You know what? I think it's the Mercury retrograde, really.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
absolutely. It. But I mean, it's a podcast. Sometimes things happen. So yeah, it's fine. But there's always Zoom to record. So that's
like
good.
the good old days.
Exactly. Yeah. So let's just jump right in and have you tell us your tech story.
Yeah. So I was a bit of a non-traditional late bloomer student. I didn't go right into tech, and I didn't actually think I wanted necessarily a white collar job when I was younger. I was very intrigued by the trades. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. And so I spent a lot of years, kind of in community college doing different jobs. And then eventually decided that I really wanted to go into public policy. Like, I think a lot of young idealistic people, like, yeah, let's go like change public policy for the better. And so I made it a point to take certain types of classes, and I eventually transferred into UC Berkeley. Go Bears.
Nice.
And I was at Berkeley around the time that things were really accelerating in the consumer tech space, specifically hardware. And the big thing that happened kind of right around there was the iPhone and the iPad and these sort of things that you could just see like, wow, the world is really going to change, and we don't exactly know how or why or when. And so I had a kind of breakthrough moment of, wow, if I really want to be a force of change, I should go into technology. Like that's where it's happening. That's where you can make an app that, millions of people like incorporate into their lives overnight, for good or for better, or for worse, I should say. And so I really wanted to pursue a career in technology. And my first job right out of college was at a very traditional technology big firm based out of Wisconsin, of all places, specifically in the healthcare space. And so that's where I got to really cut my teeth in the technology world, running implementations, learning how to be a project manager, learning how to be a professional of all kinds, manage meetings and do follow-ups and do, write great emails. And so that was kind of my path initially into technology, but I've been here for about 11 years. It's just really flown by in a lot of ways.
Good for you. Yeah. Healthcare is so funny. That comes up to me all of the time. I also have a lot of experience in healthcare. I had a help desk job long time ago where I handled like scanning software for like MRIs or something like that. It was really cool actually, but the backups were on tapes. That's how old I am. So I had to manually like get the backups and send them somewhere for storage and then put the new one. Wow. That's my healthcare experience.
It's still pretty ripe for innovation, I gotta say. There's still a lot of room to grow in healthcare technology, both on the provider side, the consumer side, the coverage side.
Absolutely.
Like,
yeah. So after healthcare, you're at Stripe now, which is amazing. I use that, of course. What is your role and responsibilities?
Yeah, so today I lead a section of our global professional services team that focuses on the enterprise user base, which is what Stripe actually calls our customers. And so we define an enterprise in Stripe terms as an industry or a company who has existed prior to the internet, which is a lot of companies actually. So we're talking about companies like Ford Motors, companies that have a big established presence. Obviously, they've implemented technology, but they're now partnering with companies like Stripe to really innovate. I don't want to say stay relevant because that sounds kind of like, oh, what are you going to do to stay relevant? But these large traditional blue chip companies are just as innovative as I think of a lot of startups and a lot of digital natives. And so my department and my team that I lead works with the largest companies in the world to implement Stripe technology and to really innovate with it. It's not just a matter of turning on the technology and building the integration. It's a matter of what are you going to do to really fundamentally change how you do business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really, really cool. I don't have any experience in that type of thing, but it's such a great service, honestly. I've used Stripe for almost a year now for this podcast. So yeah. So it's great. Thank you so much. Let's talk about your book. I want to actually pull it up and like screen share so people can see it on YouTube if that's what they're doing. So yeah, this book, Make Me the Boss, Surviving as a Millennial Manager in the Corporate World. Like when I saw this, I was just 100% have you on the show because this is literally me. Like I teach this stuff. And so I'm always looking for other perspectives. So tell us about it.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. Can I just take you around with me as my like personal hype woman? By the way, that's so awesome that you use Stripe. I think that's one of the really exciting things that's happening is the creator economy and companies like Stripe are facilitating a whole new type of entrepreneur.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah,
That's me.
That's so I wrote this book over the course of 3 years. It was really hard to write it, really painful. The glitz and glamour of having written it is totally worth it. In the moment, it was quite painful. So I became a people manager about 10 years ago, 9 or 10 years ago. I was kind of thrown into it at a startup. And this is like a classic startup story. You hire your first employees, and then as you grow, those employees just become managers. And so the types of skills that make you great as an employee or a leader even are not the same skills that make you into a boss and into a people manager. And so I had to learn a lot of things the hard way. And then over the course of my career, I've just observed and promoted myself so many people into management roles that really struggled in the first 6 to 9 months. It was like that was the time where things are unrecognizable. And so I wanted to write this book as a sort of life raft for people that were in this position, because I think they're really special and really important in the world. And then quite frankly, I think people that report into millennials who are managers for the first time are like, they deserve to have an amazing boss. Everybody does. I think it's one of those things that we can really dramatically alter your quality of life if you have a good boss or not. And so I wrote it for, general people too, that I think just deserve to have a really good workplace experience.
Yeah, absolutely. What you just said, like the first 6 to 9 months of your first time being a manager, I know I've told this story before on the podcast, but it's very applicable here. I was a horrible manager the first time. I took the old command and control style instead of actually like supporting people and, coaxing out talent and setting them up for success. That's also a really good one. So yeah, I have been reading this book. I'm about halfway through, I think. Yeah,
Oh,
but I think for the rest of the podcast, we're just going to kind of talk through some of the main points because it's so good. So yeah, I'll stop the share.
Kelly, that's probably what you had observed, that command and control. And so I do think it's just like we've seen that, we've all had that boss. And so we're kind of raised to think like, oh, that's what authority is. And so I think there's a big generational difference, both from people like you and me who are just not necessarily like naturally that way, but also what people expect and need out of their manager today, I think is different. It's a much more interconnected world. So I think the workplace has changed a lot since that type of leadership was like the predominant way to lead.
Exactly. It was really hard to unlearn all that I had learned, That's a famous quote, but yeah. So how can millennials become better managers?
Yeah, so millennials are by and far the most common generational group that is a first-time manager today. The average age of a first-time manager is 30, which kind of checks out. You got like maybe 5 to 6 years of work experience stepping into that first role. That is like right in the middle of the millennial generation, is like your 30-year-old, late 20s, all the way up into like really your early 40s now.
Yeah, that's me.
And so, yeah. And so we are the generation that is all of a sudden like having some power, having some money, having some influence. It's very kind of weird actually, but it's important to just understand that the tide is turning a bit in terms of kind of who's stepping up in the workplace. So first of all is I think millennials should very much consider becoming people managers. I think we are naturally have a lot of gifts as a generation in that we did grow up with technology, or at least we came of age in a time of technology. So we're maybe not all of us like grew up with phones and things like that, but we were absolutely like into Facebook and MySpace and that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Oh,
And
MySpace.
so I know. Remember Friendster?
Oh my God. I was just going to say, yeah.
So we kind of get it, like we get what tech is all about, but at the same time, we have the unique communication skills and cultural references to relate to Gen X and even baby boomers in the workplace. And so I think we're actually in a really unique position to bring all of these generational perspectives together and lead with the skills that we have. So how can millennials become better managers? Well, besides buying and reading my book, which I have to say,
of course,
little plug, is I think understanding yourself and really unpacking your trigger points, your reactions, your fears, your accomplishments is the number one thing that I will say helps you show up better in the workplace. And as millennials, honestly, we're pretty good at this. Like we go to therapy, and we were raised by, Gen X and baby boomers who like maybe weren't so great at, the self-care and the mental health aspect. So I think really like leaning on that and bringing that into the workplace. And then I think millennials can be absolutely better managers by developing skills for managing up. This can be a little bit scary once millennials become a people manager, realizing you now have to manage your boss and your chain of commands leadership. That's a little outside of our comfort zone, I would say. So developing skills that help you do that. And then I would also just say that I think managing across is really important. I think a lot of first-time managers, you kind of get the concept of managing down, maybe working on managing up, but thinking about who your new peer group is, building those relationships and a healthy functioning team that's to your left and to your right, that is often really underlooked, but that's actually like your new team. It's not like your team down the org chart, it's your team laterally. And so I think that that's a really big area for focus.
Absolutely. I have never heard the term manage up. That's now one of my favorite things. I never considered the fact that you do have to manage people who are managing you. You know, it's a two-way street. Yeah, that's brilliant. I'll have to add that to one of my courses and send them to your book. Yeah. And actually I am working on a course right now that I could add that to, because it's completely relevant for everything I teach. So, you know. Yeah, but now that we're in this, time of COVID, it's gone on for so much longer than any of us ever expected, and has really, really changed management and leadership drastically and very quickly. What are some best practices in management to manage during this crazy time?
Oh my goodness, what an insane 2 years it has been.
Yeah.
I don't even, yeah, it's kind of crazy to think that it has been over 2 years, well over 2 years at this point. So the world is changing really fast, and some of it is COVID, some of it is economic change, some of it is, the pace of technology and innovation is so much faster. And so I think the first thing is acknowledging that it's hard, but also acknowledging what an exciting time it is to be in a position of leadership. And it's not all doom and gloom. Like the fact, for example, that the vaccine was able to be developed so quickly, the fact that the rise in technology has enabled us to connect in ways we never would have been able to if this had happened 10 years ago. And so I think it's having some perspective in that, yes, it's hard. Yes, there's many, many challenges. At the same time, we're kind of in a technological and cultural renaissance at this, so kind of keeping that balanced perspective. The second is the reality of the workplace has forever changed, and it was kind of already happening, but people are so immersed in their workplace and so immersed in their job now that the division of, your personal life and your work life, it's very blurry. It's very blurry, and it is what it is. And so I think meeting people where they're at, how they prefer to work, employees have a lot of power right now. We're still in kind of the throes of the Great Resignation, and just, doing what you can do to ensure that people have the space and the rhythm and the expectation to do their best work, whether it's at home or a hybrid situation or coming in, or they want to work from Europe, whatever.
Yes, please.
Yeah, yeah, I know.
I would love to go to Europe right now. Oh my gosh, I miss it so much. Yeah. The separation of work and life when you work from home is really hard. I have this mattress that I spent a lot of money on that I really love, and so I work from bed a whole lot, and I know that that's not a good thing to do. Like, you're really supposed to have an office, and clearly I have one, but sometimes if I'm creative and I'm like writing, then having a more chill space is good. But yeah, I wouldn't suggest working from bed, at least the couch. I think the bed is for sleep and relaxation. I'm telling myself this. Yeah.
To your point, like when creativity strikes,
Yeah.
The musical Hamilton, Lin-Manuel Miranda wrote it, at least conceptually, while he was on vacation, like in a hammock.
I didn't know that. That's so cool.
Yeah. So I think it's okay. Sometimes we have our big creative bursts when we should be in that rest time, but I think that's all right. So
exactly.
We're getting used to a new normal. And I think my advice globally is stay curious, stay flexible, don't be afraid to pivot, don't be afraid to make hard decisions. Like whatever mental model of how work is supposed to be that you may have had 2 years ago, it's gone. So be open to rethinking what is it? How are we all going to work through this?
Exactly. Yes. So smart. So I want to introduce a new segment that I'm calling Precious Gems. This is where I read your comments, your tweets, whatever, and feature you on the show. So I'm actually in a screen share and I have two Twitter comments that I wanted to show. Christine H said that she really loved the topic on inclusion and diversity in the workplace. Truly inspiring. Yeah, I think in terms of our conversation here, millennials really excel at this, I think, because we've been taught a lot more of human rights and all of that other stuff. And I think that we've kind of translated that into a workplace culture, again, that isn't like command and control. But yeah, inclusion and diversity is incredibly important, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, millennials and Gen Z, the generations that are coming to the workplace, they want their workplace to look like the world as it is today. And our values, we need to feel like our workplace represents those.
Yeah.
So if you want to stay competitive as an employer, having good, meaningful conversations and programs around D&I in the workplace is ultimately how you're going to compete for the top talent that's coming in.
Exactly.
So
Exactly. I have one more picture that is not coming up. Hold on.
Mercury retrograde starts again.
Yeah, I'm a total pro, right? Here we go. Yeah. So yeah, the second precious gem for this episode comes from Lena Zubite, I think. I hope I'm saying that right. And she says, love the recommendation. Thanks for sharing. And Tiaras and Tech, what a name. As Queen of Bugs, I love it. I was just wondering, what did you think when you saw the name of the podcast?
I absolutely love it. I'm kind of a embrace. For me, I feel like, I'm a she, her, like definitely identify as female. And so I appreciate when there's the fusion of being really interested in business, really interested in technology and good at those things while also still being feminine and playful. And so I absolutely love it.
Yes, that's like really exactly the message I want to put across, is that, technologists aren't just white men, we're all shapes and sizes, all colors, all genders, races, ethnicities, whatever. And we all have our special interests, and mine just happened to be tiaras. So I put it to use. Yeah. But yeah, if you want to be featured as a precious gem, send us your comments at Tiaras and Tech on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, and use the hashtag Make Yourself Shine. Back to Emily. So yeah, another topic that you cover in your awesome book is having a personal life and the importance of that outside of work. Can you tell us, why it's important and how having a personal life actually helps you work?
Having a personal life makes you just so much more interesting in the workplace and as a human. And so it actually, like, pursuing and investing in developing your whole brand, both in the workplace and outside of the workplace, and continuing to do that as a human. It's not like you get to the age of 30 and you're like, all right, what I'm into is what I'm into, and that's it. Like, no, keep developing that, keep curating your hobbies and your interests. It is important to have things you can talk to your coworkers about that aren't just a job. So it's going to actually like make you more effective to do that. And then the second is it does really bring and keep a lot of perspective in your life. I think as humans, you should be surrounding yourself by people that have very different walks of life and perspectives from you. And if you are lucky enough and have the right access to have a career in technology, most likely you're going to be in the top earning income bracket of the entire world. And I think what a tragedy to not have a circle of friends and have a community that can remind you of how lucky we are, and the importance of using that power and access for good. And so I think having that perspective will keep you humble, and at the end of the day, it's going to make you more effective in achieving both your personal and your professional goals.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that it's important to connect with people at work and have relationships. Working relationships are really important, because when people aren't like communicating, then their productivity isn't as good. You're wasting so much time on people who are scared to ask questions or whatever. And it breaks my heart when I see companies who don't have that strategy or environment, of collaboration. And that every department, this especially happens in very large companies, every department, every team is in their own little silo. And so they're not like communicating with each other and sharing ideas and plans. So that's a disaster. Yeah,
Yes, I agree.
exactly. One of the main topics that I love that you cover is your inner imposter. This is probably the number one thing that I need my mentors for, is just to contact them when I'm feeling imposter syndrome. How do you get over your inner imposter?
I'm so glad that you have curated a network of mentors
I have
that
6.
right.
Yeah.
That's exactly the right way to do it. And I guess I would say that I don't think you ever really fully get over it. And I think every time maybe you feel really confident and then you do something else that's just out of your comfort zone, and then it comes rushing back. So I think that it's a matter of managing it, and in some ways embracing it. We'll get to that in a minute, to make it work for you. And I'll tell you what I mean. So imposter syndrome fundamentally is a phenomenon that we experience that is a nagging little voice in our head telling us you're not good enough, your people are going to see right through you, your employer got the wrong resume, maybe you overrepresented all of these kind of negative thoughts. And so to overcome that, or to sort of live with it, I think it's very important to have peers and have mentors that will give you really meaningful, genuinely constructive feedback, so that you are aware of where you're really strong and where you're not so strong. And so shifting the narrative from I'm not good enough to being the reality, which is there's some things I'm really good at, and there's some areas for growth, and I have some blind spots over here. And that is okay. Like, that is literally okay. Every single person, leader, or professional in the world has both. And so when you're in touch with that and like really know that, I think that's your biggest tool, is like fundamentally understanding your abilities. And then the second, I think, is having imposter syndrome keeps you humble in some ways. And so I think cautionary is, I think we've all worked with or for leaders that are clearly overcompensating, and you could just see it and you just completely lose respect for them.
Yeah.
So don't become that leader. Don't become the leader that is just like trying so hard to say, no, I'm so great. I'm so good. I'm such a badass. I can do this. I can do that. Like, keep it close to you. So where you just like have a reasonable understanding of your abilities.
Exactly.
And so that's the best advice that I have.
Yeah. I think what you touched on there, how your inner imposter isn't always a bad thing because it keeps you humble. It's just that you have to manage and control it so that it doesn't go so out of hand that you stop taking jobs because you don't think that you have the skills, or something like that, which is what I've been through a lot. I wish I had your book. I'm
I
just
wish I
going to
had
keep
had
saying
it
it.
too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so something else that happens a lot at work are crises. You have emergencies, or something happens to your project or your team or something like that. What is important to achieve success when that happens?
Oh, so I think it depends on the category of the crisis a little bit. So as a manager, and I try to break this down in my book, but there's different categories of emergencies, and how you respond to them depends a little bit on the nature of it. So the worst, yuckiest one is an HR related crisis. So like something really bad has happened. Maybe it's someone on your team. You need to respond to that as a P0. And so the best advice that I have for people, assuming that you have an HR department, maybe you don't, but make sure you have a relationship with your HR business partner, know who that person is, and get ahead of anything even before it happens. And a lot of first-time managers think, oh, I shouldn't really talk to my HR person unless like something really bad happens. Or if even if I just had like a weird gut sense or weird conversation with somebody, I don't want to bring this to HR. Like, don't think that way. Like, HR is there to help you succeed. And so they, in my experience, have always given a really helpful and objective and neutral view of a particular situation that I might be dealing with. And there is no consequences for you or whoever else to just have a conversation about, hey, something weird has happened. Let me just like talk to you about this and get another opinion. So that's number one. Have a relationship with your HR business partner. And if you have any gut sense of there's like legal exposure or financial exposure, like depending on how bad this crisis is, and most likely you won't deal with this your first year, but you might. And so if you do, you'll know what to do. The second is if there's some crisis related to the work itself. So if you're in charge of an engineering team, or you're in charge of a sales team or something, and something that your team is responsible for goes very badly, like you ship a major bug, you have a big account that like didn't renew, you've got a really unhappy customer, like something really bad has happened, that is also a P0. And so you basically have to take in all of the information you can, reach out to your peers, your management chain, gather things, and you need to wrap around that situation as if it was your issue. Even if it wasn't something you personally did, if it's something anyone in your chain of command did, like that is now your issue. Gotta deal with it.
Yeah.
Oof, not fun.
It is
but
not
it happens.
fun.
And that's why managers get paid more, is because like these are the things that you gotta be ready for at any minute. And then there's like the next category of crisis, which is like some really unfortunate and terrible like health emergency or family emergency, like some personal crisis is happening with someone on your team. And so that's another type of issue where like you need to drop everything and handle that and make sure your team member is supported. And if you need to just jump into their work and start triaging, like what are they, and that happens, it's happened to me probably once or twice a year where, there's a family emergency, there's the person themselves has a health crisis. And so wrapping around that and managing out of that. And then the last one I think is like the company is having a crisis. And so, this most often will manifest as, reorg or layoffs or things of that nature, overnight bankruptcy. This will happen in startups frequently. Sometimes people wake up and find out, oh, their startup went under. And so that is where I think the leadership really, really happens. And so when it happens, obviously you don't want to be grateful for it in the moment because it's like, oh, this is so terrible. But how you lead and respond to something really unfortunate happening like that is how you get your leadership chops. And so stepping up with courage, leading with conviction, being able to empathize with people that bad things are happening, but also still do what is needed to move whatever thing it is forward. That is where at the end of the day, you'll be really, really proud of how you reacted and navigated those really unfortunate circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, like the first time I was a manager, I didn't know any of these things. And so I didn't always act appropriately. I actually had a employee threaten to sue at one point, like in my first year. And it was over money that I wasn't responsible for, paychecks and stuff like that, but my boss told her I was. And so she was really mad and threatened to call a lawyer. And I was just like, I will do anything for you that you want. Please don't call a lawyer, And I really liked her too. So I just felt horrible and I didn't handle it right. And yeah, so sometimes.
Yeah, that's bad. I could trade some more stories with you. I've never had an employee threaten to sue, but I did have a customer threaten to sue based on something that one of my, it was like, oh my God. So
that must be so scary. I haven't had that happen yet, but you never know what happens. You try your hardest, but sometimes it just doesn't work out. Yeah. Anyway, on that happy note, we do have to wrap this up. Oh my God, I cannot wait to get to the rest of your book to read like the second half of the questions that we talked about, because they're all really important topics, I would say, especially imposter syndrome. I think that prevents a lot of people from trying in the first place, to achieve like moonshot goals and stuff like that. But you should just rein it in, have your support, and read Emily's book. So before I let you go, can you tell people where they can connect with you?
Absolutely. So I do have a website, emilytsitrian.com. You can follow me there. I've got my own podcast, starting up a blog this year, and a few other resources for first-time managers. I also am pretty active on LinkedIn, so please find me on LinkedIn. I just joined the LinkedIn creators whatever, so I'm figuring out what that's going to look like and experimenting with it a little bit. But LinkedIn is where I'm probably the most active.
Great. Yeah. And I will have links to all of your sites and your book and all of that in the show notes / description. Thank you so much for spending this time with me.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really great meeting you and great conversation.
Yeah, same. If you want to support us, please like, subscribe, and share this episode with your fellow gems. Let me know in the comments what other topics you would like me to cover, and follow Tiaras and Tech on social media and use the hashtag MakeYourselfShine. Thanks for watching or listening, and have a great day.